I'm an NHS doctor. I've got 16 years experience in the NHS. I specialise in emergency medicine and trauma.
What the has either of those got to do with nutrition?
And I'm here to talk about nutrition.
I'm a fireman and I'm here to talk about igloos. So recently Prem from YouTube channel Meat of the Matter had an NHS doctor on to discuss what is the optimal diet for a human. You may remember this
talking matchstick
from a juvenile video on Spherage's channel where they all made a nuisance of themselves by bringing unsanitary raw meat into a vegan cafe with the express purpose of upsetting everyone in there. When asked to leave, instead of walking out like normal people, they just argued like a bunch of 5-year-olds.
Vegans in November went to a meat eaters restaurant and screamed at them, we're being very nice.
Okay, go out, I call the police. I'm not joking with you, and it's not discussing me, I don't care.
Okay, then why are you so upset?
Go out now.
Your brain is preying on your diet.
Yeah, go with your
You're mentally ill.
You would have to question the common sense of any medical professional willing to be associated with this sort of delinquent. On to the video. I met an NHS doctor with 16 years experience. All views are his own and not intended as medical advice. Change the S to a C to make the word advice. If you want to be taken seriously on a matter as complex and serious as nutrition, you may like to check your basic spelling.
So we're here with a real doctor.
Ooh.
And he's gonna spill the beans on his perspective of the optimal human diet.
What's the point? NHS doctors get about 4 hours total training on nutrition their whole careers. I'll do 4 hours research a day.
Introduce yourself.
So I'm an NHS doctor. I've got 16 years experience in the NHS.
Not willing to give your name, I see. I don't blame you.
I specialise in emergency medicine and trauma.
What the has either of those got to do with nutrition?
And I'm here to talk about nutrition.
I'm a fireman and I'm here to talk about igloos.
This space needs some authority. Vegans think that all the authorities are telling them it's healthy for them at all stages of life.
Well, you know, that's simply because the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the British Dietetics Association and the World Health Organization all say that that is true. But of course, a simpleton like you knows much better than the top nutritional authorities in the world.
Start by sharing your perspective, your knowledge on the nutrition and the medical aspects of the vegan diet.
So ethics aside and environmental issues aside, purely from a nutritional point of view, it is a deficient diet.
No, it's not.
From my perspective, it's a regime that will result in an inexorable decline in health.
Is it?
It boasts a total absence of vitamin B12.
What's this, a mirage?
It's going to be extremely deficient in vitamin D and calcium, and I'd be extremely concerned for long-term bone health.
I get more than the recommended amount of vitamin D daily and also more than the 1,000 milligrams of calcium recommended, which is probably set way too high.
Best sources of vitamin D, again, are going to be flesh, meat, fish, dairy, milk.
Well, that's where you're wrong, because this vitamin D in milk is fortified. Animal flesh has a small amount of vitamin D, but if you look at people like Sean Baker, carnivorous eater, eats nothing but meat, his vitamin D is through the floor. Think again, son.
You're going to be deficient in iron.
I get nearly 3 times the RDA of iron.
So flesh contains heme iron,
which is associated with prostate cancer, diabetes and heart disease.
But then you've got all the oxalic acid on top of it. So actually the overall bioavailability of iron from that source spinach is actually really low.
And yet my blood tests always show all my vitamins and minerals at the top of range.
Omega-3, all right, so there are 3 essential omega-3 fatty acids, DHA, EPA and ALA. The only omega-3 you can get from plants is ALA.
Wrong, you can get DHA from algae.
DHA, which is absolutely critical to brain development, is absent in the plant kingdom.
No, it's an algae, dumb.
There is some biochemical conversion from ALA to DHA, but it's a very limited process.
Which is irrelevant if you eat enough ALA. For most people, 1 to 3 tablespoons of flax or chia seeds is enough. 1 to 3 tablespoons.
You mentioned, they need to take supplements, but a lot of what I'm looking at shows that they don't even work properly. The supplements, we need it in our food.
Well, that's weird, because in studies of people with disease where they're given the supplement, the disease ceases.
And I think you have to question the bioavailability. Let's take B12 for example. You have to question the bioavailability. If you've got a lump of meat and you've got a capsule, clearly you're going to be absorbing a lot more B12 from the product as Mother Nature has intended.
Conjecture, show me the study.
Yeah, and then it might even be toxic, the actual supplement.
Correct.
What? Meat, dairy and eggs aren't toxic? Wake up, you drip.
I saw a lady in the emergency department, I think maybe 10 years ago in North East London. She was a vegan. She was in her mid-30s and she tripped and stumbled and she fell onto her outstretched hand. This is a 35-year-old lady.
Yeah.
And she completely shattered her wrist.
What, so you saw one vegan in 10 years that had bone health? Maybe she was just eating vegan chocolates and vegan donuts. If this diet was intrinsically deficient, surely you would have seen thousands of vegans with the same problem by now. Sorry mate, the anecdotal report of one vegan 10 years ago does not a bad diet make.
And you read in the papers, you know, this thing about raising children as vegans. I don't know if it's possible to do that in a way that's considered to be healthy. But I think there was something in the papers a year or two ago about a Belgian couple that were actually given a suspended jail sentence because their child had actually died.
What about the thousands of omnivorous parents that have their babies taken from them by the authorities for neglect each year?
So what, in your view, is the optimal human diet?
I think that's a really good question, and I think the answer to that lies in our evolutionary history.
No, it doesn't. It relies on looking at the actual science to see what effect foods are having now.
So I think as human beings, as Homo sapiens, our nutritional requirements are fundamentally shaped by our evolution.
Oh God, now he thinks he's an anthropologist as well.
We share a common ancestor with the modern day chimpanzee, and we branched off about 7 million years ago. For that period of time, for millions of years, we were surviving on the plains of Africa, the African savannah, living predominantly on a meat-based diet.
Where we thanks to modern analysis of coprolites, which is fossilised Paleolithic man's stool, we now know that we ate up to about 150 grams of plant fibre per day. Yes, that's right, we were eating about 90% plants.
There's good archaeological and anthropological evidence that omega-3, for example, was highly instrumental in the evolution and development of the human brain. As we evolved from Homo habilis to Homo erectus to primitive hominids with larger brains, that omega-3 was highly instrumental. Where does omega-3 come from? It comes from meat.
No, dum-dum. Animals don't make omega-3. It's in the plants that they eat. Hello?
The most predominant source of omega-3, DHA, comes from meat.
Just because you keep saying something doesn't make it true, you know.
Even evidence such as, drawings, cave drawings of hominids using tools. Those tools weren't used to catch vegetables. Those tools were used to hunt and to kill.
In order to kill animals, we had to develop tools, which is the cleverest thing that we ever could do at that time. So in order to be able to do that, our brains must have already been advanced before we were eating the meat. Are you keeping up?
Anthropological archaeologists have studied the bone chemistry, the mineral content of bone. So if you take a herbivore and you take a carnivore and you ground down that bone and you add acid to it and you use a device called a mass spectrometer to analyse the the isotopic composition of carbon and nitrogen in that bone, what emerges is a clear pattern. The isotopic composition that has a herbivorous profile, the herbivorous profile has one isotopic composition, and the carnivorous profile has a very distinct isotopic composition.
Except if there's periods of drought, which there often is in that area, it f***s everything up. These tests are now known to be unreliable.
Yeah.
This is uncontestable scientific fact. Our hominid ancestors on the African savannah were gorging themselves on a predominantly meat-based diet.
Oh my good God.
Probably a paleo-esque type diet is probably what constitutes optimal human nutrition.
What you're saying is mere conjecture. Look at the science, son. Primitive cyborg brain malfunction.
You cannot derive the same nutrient density from plants as you can from animals.
According to Harvard, vegetables have 16 times the amount of nutrients found in meat. And according to the largest ever study on the topic, 16 teams of researchers all around the globe looking at 3,100 different foods and beverages found that on average, plant foods have 64 times the amount of anti-cancer, anti-aging, antioxidants relative to animal foods. But, who wants to slow the aging process and avoid cancer?
This is absolutely packed full of nutrients.
that will kill you.
And also, you just look at the digestive systems. You know, I think that there's an argument that we're herbivorous. We're actually not herbivorous at all. Okay, we've already discussed why we're carnivorous. But if you look at the alimentary system of a Homo sapien, okay, it's a carnivorous alimentary system. It's a short gut,
long gut.
We've got a small cecum.
Well, it's an appendix.
It's an appendix. You know, so the gastric parietal cells of the stomach secrete something called intrinsic factor. That intrinsic factor binds to B12, and that intrinsic factor B12 complex is absorbed in the terminal ileum. So our guts are processed and evolved to absorb B12. Where does B12 come from? It comes from meat.
Oh no, you silly goose. B12 may be found in meat, but it's produced by microbes found in soil and water.
But they say eat the dirt, you know, the vegans.
No vegans say eat the dirt. You're just trying to make your untenable position look tenable.
So we're not herbivorous. You know, we don't have the multiple, you know, compartmental stomach and a rumen.
Many herbivores have just one stomach. Don't confuse ruminants with all herbivores, or you make yourself look very, very stupid.
The digestive system of a herbivore is an extremely long digestive system. It's lined with trillions of cellulase producing bacteria. Cellulase being the enzyme that breaks down cellulose, which is the predominant polysaccharide in plants. We don't possess those cellulase producing bacteria.
Luckily, we can just chew food up, freeing up the nutrients, which is why all my nutrients test at the top of range.
My experience is it in fact is very beneficial for you, cholesterol.
Yeah.
So, you know, apparently 50% of our cells are made of cholesterol.
Oh, it's part of the cell, you know, it's part of the phospholipids. It's absolutely essential.
Yeah.
And you'd simply die without it.
Yeah, I think this is a good place to finish the video. If we need to ingest cholesterol to form the membranes of all of our cell walls in our body, how the am I standing here talking now? People at home, please don't listen to these couple of dumb Now click on this video now, or I'll consider you as clever as Dumb and Dumber.